The Memphis Grizzlies made a new signing on Thursday, and you probably just brushed it off because it wasn't a big name. But I'm going to tell you why this might be directly tied to Ja Morant's suspension. But not only that, we got to talk about what's going on in the FIBA World Cup. Jaren Jackson Jr. played. Santi Aldama was supposed to play. He played, but 7 minutes. We're going to get into all that coming up right here on Locked On Grizzlies.
You are Locked On Grizzlies, your daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies. I am your host today, Damichael Cole, beat writer for the Commercial Appeal right here in Memphis, Tennessee. We're finally back. We had a few days off. Ja Morant is got a few well-deserved days off, and I myself, I've been tired. I mean, I got up for that 3 a.m. game on Wednesday. I said, you know what? I think I'll be able to record Locked On Grizzlies, and then it hit my body like a sack of bricks. So we're back Friday, though. We're back with Locked On Grizzlies today. We got a lot to talk about in today's show. And before we get to that, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Remember, FanDuel is the official sports book of Locked On. And right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Yeah, you heard that right. That math didn't sound right to you probably the first time you heard it, but you heard me right. New customers can bet $5 and you can get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. All you gotta do is visit FanDuel.com/locked on to get started. Appreciate you for tuning in to Locked On Grizzlies today. Make sure you tune in everywhere we are. That's Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, wherever you get podcasts. Locked On Grizzlies is there right now 3 days a week as me and Joe Mullinax get into the flow. This will be the final month, I think, will be 3 days. When the calendar turns to October, we're turning the clock back up because, as you know, if we said on here, October 2nd, tentatively, is the date that the Grizzlies should be getting back into the fold of things with Media Day and everything surrounding the team. But speaking of everything surrounding the team, the Grizzlies made a couple under-the-radar moves recently. The first one won't come as any type of surprise to you. Me and Joe Mullinax have talked about this on the show. G.G. Jackson is officially signed to a two-way contract. If you remember out in Summer League, saw him play those first couple games, you're like, hold up now. This man might play his way onto it, even though it sounds like the general idea is to get him on a two-way contract. The way he was looking for a second, like the Grizzlies had a tough decision on their hands. But nonetheless, G.G. Jackson signed to a two-way contract that gives the Grizzlies 3 two-way players as of this moment. Vince Williams is also on a two-way contract, and so is Jacob Gilyard, the point guard. Under the new CBA, the Grizzlies are allowed to have 3 players under two-way contracts. We'll see if those 3 players are the ones who remain on two-way contracts throughout the full entirety of the season, and we'll see how that unfolds. But congratulations to G.G. Jackson getting his first NBA opportunity. Sounds like we'll see him a lot with the hustle as well. I think that'll be great for his development, and we'll talk more about what that decision kind of means for his career going forward as well. But we got to talk about another signing that was recently made as well, and that's Shaq Harrison. The Grizzlies signed Shaq Harrison to a contract this season. The terms of that contract are not yet disclosed. Once we find those out, we'll get that to you because that's probably a big part of this. But I've been talking to some people and kind of getting some intel on what's going on here. And let's just say right now with Shaq Harrison coming in, he's not your typical camp body, right? This isn't a 22-year-old raw prospect or anything like that. Shaq Harrison is 29. He's played on several NBA teams, and you know what you're going to get at this point. You're going to get a rugged defender. If I could say, a name for Grizzlies fans, think a bigger Javon Carter. Javon Carter was that point of attack pit bull that just got in your face and made it hard on you. Well, Shaq Harrison can do those same things, but he's tall. He's 6'4". He can block shot, get out in the passing lanes. He's very good at the point of attack. I think he broke in with the Suns. He's played with the Bulls, played with a couple more teams. Really good defensive profile. Offensively, very limited, and that's probably why he's bounced around so much in the league. To this one, not probably too. That is why he's bounced around the league. Limited playmaking potential as well for a guard, but you're not getting Shaq Harrison for all that. If you remember, before Derrick Rose signed to the Grizzlies, we were having this whole talk, me, Joe, and everyone else around the Grizzlies nation. We're having this talk. Who will the Grizzlies fill with their last spot on the 15-man roster? I said guard, and the reason was because Ja Morant would be out. Without Ja Morant, you have 2 or 3 natural guards. You have Marcus Smart, you have Luke Kennard, you have Desmond Bane. Outside of those guys, you got to shuffle some guys out there. Sure, John Conchar can play guard. Yes, he's done it in the past, but he's more natural at the 3. Sure, you can move Zaire Williams up there. Sure, you can go get Vince Williams off the bench, who's on a 2-way contract, who hasn't played much with the Grizzlies and who probably projects eventually at some point in his career as a 3. You could get him and play him at the 2 as well. Zaire Williams, he has the body. He can play the 2, and he physically moves very well. He can play the 2. But at the end of the day, Marcus Smart, Luke Kennard, Desmond Bane, those are the 3 people you trust as guards, and you don't go into an NBA season with a 3-guard rotation. So the Grizzlies went out and got Derrick Rose, right? Now you got 4. And what happens if they turn an ankle or something real small? It's just you playing back-to-backs and Derrick Rose is getting his typical maintenance day or whatever the case may be. What if any of those things, right, while Ja Morant's out? Well, the Grizzlies have kind of given themselves potentially, I want to say potentially because there's no guarantee that Shaq Harrison makes it out of camp. This could be a camp body, but what the Grizzlies are thinking here, I believe, is if you bring Shaq Harrison into camp and he performs well, there's an opportunity potentially there for him to be extra guard depth while Ja Morant is suspended. There's an opportunity there. No guarantee that they may have. Remember, the Grizzlies also have other names. They have Josh Christopher. They have Vince Williams on a 2-way deal, as I mentioned. They have Jacob Gilliard on a 2-way deal. And those are both players who could play theoretically while Ja is out. But Shaq Harrison, again, it gives you more depth. It gives you more versatility. You may be asking, how can Shaq Harrison factor into the roster? Well, according to the NBA CBA, if a player has a suspension longer than 6 games, Ja Morant suspended 25 games, so he meets that criteria. If a player has a suspension longer than 6 games, this is in the CBA, a team can put that player on, I think it's called the suspension exempt list. But basically what that does is after 5 games, so after the Grizzlies' first 5 games, Ja Morant will be eligible to be put on the suspension exempt list and for the rest of that suspension. So 19, 20 games, the Grizzlies would gain an extra roster spot, and that roster spot can be used to acquire another player who can potentially impact the rotation or potentially just be another body for depth at guard. And Shaq Harrison, bringing him into camp, potentially profiles as one of those type guys. As I said earlier, he's not some raw developmental kid. This isn't a 22-year-old that, we might throw him down there with the hustle and see what he's made of. And in 4 years, we can use him as part of the rotation. No, it's not the case with Shaq Harrison. 4 years, Shaq Harrison will be 33. This is a defensive guy who can come in the game, be a spark on that end, get you some turnovers, get out in the passing lanes, and be a spark. That's what he can do. And that's typically what you want out of your end of the roster guys. So he makes sense from that standpoint. You got Derrick Rose, you got Marcus Smart, you got Luke Kennard, you got Desmond Bane. Those are going to be your top 4, I would say, natural guards while Ja's out. Shaq Harrison, potentially we'll see. We'll talk to the Grizzlies. We'll talk to Zach. We'll talk to Taylor well before that decision is made on Shaq Harrison. So we'll get more intel on what his future is for the Grizzlies. But this is someone to keep an eye on. A great defensive profile, not much shooting, 28% three-point shooter in his career. It's funny, how these things work sometimes, because the last time I saw Shaq Harrison was at FedEx Forum when he was on the practice court with the Lakers, because he played with the South Bay Lakers this past season, the G League affiliate of the Lakers, averaged 12 points per game over there. But he was practicing with the Lakers in the playoffs. So, no, he wasn't on the roster or eligible to play in the playoffs for the Lakers, but he was practicing as a member, of the G League team, who has a lot of NBA experience or whatnot. So, Shaq Harrison, latest signing. Congratulations to G.G. Jackson as well. But we're going to switch the tone a little bit here. We got to talk about Jaren Jackson Jr. and Team USA. Got a lot to talk about. He played against an NBA caliber center, and we're going to talk about how he fared in that matchup coming up on Locked On Grizzlies. But before we get to that, this episode, again, I told you this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. So we got to talk about FanDuel Sportsbook. FanDuel Sportsbook is where you go to make every moment more. All you got to do is go over to FanDuel.com/locked on. If you're tuning in on YouTube, you see it. If you're listening, it's Locked On. It's spelled LOCKED on. And if you're a new user, look, it's NFL season, and I know a lot of us are football fans. I can't think of a better deal out there than what FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, is offering. New customers can bet $5, $5, and you can get 200 in bonus bets guaranteed. And check this out. All customers who bet the $5 will get $100 off NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. If you haven't heard, NFL Sunday Ticket has transferred from DirecTV over to YouTube and YouTube TV. And they're throwing some deals out there right now. One of the best deals I've seen is bet $5 and you can get $100 off your NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV if you're a new customer on FanDuel. Look, this is the best time to join. You got the baseball playoff season is approaching. You're going to the stretch run here. NBA season is right around the corner. And NFL, baseball, basketball, all at the same time real soon. All you got to do is visit FanDuel.com/locked on. Kick off the NFL season with an offer you don't want to miss. FanDuel is the official partner of the NFL. Coming up next, we're going to talk about Jaren Jackson Jr. and how he fared with the Grizzlies. How he fared with Team USA. Coming up on Locked On Grizzlies. Welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies, everyone. I'm Damichael Cole, beat writer of the Commercial Appeal right here in Memphis, Tennessee. And I tuned in. Team USA had a 3:40 a.m. local start time for Friday's game against Montenegro in the FIBA World Cup. So if you saw that 3:40 start time, you said, I'm not getting up at 3:40 in the morning. I'm not setting that alarm. Guess what? You came to the right place, because Locked On Grizzlies, we're going to have you covered every single time. But tuned into that game, and there was a lot to take away from it. One of the very first and earliest takeaways was Jaren Jackson Jr. in the first half. Only played 5 minutes, 2 points, no rebounds, no assists, no blocks, no steals. But you know what he did have? He had 2 fouls. And listening to Steve Kerr talk up to this point, Steve Kerr basically a couple games ago talked about how he wants Jaren Jackson Jr. to kind of choose his opportunities when to go after the blocks and when to hold back, because, Team USA needs him on the floor. Well, tuning into this game, he had 2 fouls in the first half, and Jaren didn't see the floor again. Team USA basically used Bobby Portis, Walker Kessler, who is played sparingly in the rotation. So this was kind of, I think, the first rotation minutes he's seen in the World Cup games. Walker Kessler, Bobby Portis, Paolo Banchero, all 3 of those guys kind of occupied the front court minutes in the second quarter, and Jaren Jackson Jr. rolled the pine. So he finished with 5 minutes in the first half. Second half, a little bit more involved. Finished the game with 11 points, finished the game with a block, a steal, but guess what? Played 20 minutes, so got more involved, but 0 rebounds. And that's what we got to talk about, because this was the matchup that I wanted to see as much as any matchup with Jaren Jackson Jr. There will be many more fun matchups for Jaren, but this was one, including the next one. We'll get to that in a second. But this was one that I said, okay, he's going against Montenegro, who has a two-time All-Star NBA center. I think this might be the only time he goes against a two-time All-Star right in front of him at center in the entire World Cup, and that's Nikola Vucevic, Chicago Bulls center, former center for the Orlando Magic, and he's a skilled scorer. He can shoot it, and I mean, he's a talented player. And Jaren matched up against him, picked up 2 early fouls, guarded him early in the second half, and then Team USA switched it up. They did it. They pulled a Grizzlies move. Josh Hart started being the primary defender against Vucevic, and Jaren Jackson Jr. guarded the forward, which is also another guy who's near 7 feet tall. I think his name is Marjanovic. Basically, he had to switch matchups, and what that did was Team USA allowed Jaren Jackson Jr. to play more of that roaming role, right? We've seen it a lot with the Grizzlies when Dillon Brooks would guard Lauri Markkanen. So Jaren would be stretched out, all the way at the three-point line, and he could guard anything coming to the rim. Or when they played Zion Williamson and you put Dillon Brooks on Zion Williamson, and Jaren basically would lurk in the paint, operate as a help defender, and get a lot of weak side blocks and chase down blocks and things of that nature. Seemed like Team USA had that idea when they made the switch, but Montenegro was a little prepared. Montenegro said, okay, you're going to take Jaren off of Vucevic. We're going to put Jaren in pick and roll. So they ran some pick and rolls with the other big, and that kind of took Jaren away from the basket, and Vucevic dominated in that small stretch when he went against Anthony Edwards, when he went against Josh Hart. So Team USA, once Jaren checked in the fourth quarter, eventually made that switch back. Jaren guarded him down the stretch. And down the stretch of the game, Jaren played his best basketball. He finished the game with 11 points, but I should reiterate that he wasn't doing much scoring through 3 quarters. A lot of his work was done in the fourth quarter. The steal came in the fourth quarter. I think the block came in the fourth quarter too, chase down block. He had a steal off of a deflection that turned into 2 points the other way. And I think that was the basket that gave Team USA a 10-point lead. So Jaren Jackson Jr. made an impact in this game. But what I want to talk about is the fact that I've talked about it at least, I can own it, it's how he is probably going to be the future center for the Grizzlies. And Team USA will give him the perfect opportunity to showcase what he can do in that role. And not only that, looking at those first 2 games, I was like, shoot, this is the future center. There's no ifs and buts about it. But 0 rebounds just stands out to me. And I know some people say, yeah, the guards on Team USA crash the boards hard, as they should. Team USA does not have a lot of size. And for all the criticism that I'm throwing Jaren Jackson Jr.'s way, Steve Kerr probably deserves as much, if not more, because Steve Kerr, he better stop coaching these guys like they're the Golden State Warriors. These ain't the Golden State Warriors. You got Paolo Banchero playing center like he's Draymond Green. And yes, it works against certain teams, but when you're playing against Vucevic, when you're playing this next game against Jonas Valanciunas, and when you're playing those upper-tier elite teams, that ain't working. Draymond Green is a generational defender, and you can't just throw 6'7", 6'8", 6'9" guys out there and say, go guard centers, when in the NBA, Palo is playing, the 3 and the 4. Like, come on. But that's why I have a suggestion, and my suggestion is when you get into those type situations when Jaren is not rebounding the basketball, put him at the 4. You got Bobby Portis who can shoot the 3 ball. You got Walker Kessler who operates well, in the paint, capable of shooting the 3, but Jaren can shoot the 3 ball. So these guys can play off of each other. And Jaren, he has the capability of attacking those mismatches and taking advantage when you put him at the 4. If you look at what he did in this game, especially down the stretch, he went at Vucevic, he went at the other bigs with his right-handed hook, left-handed hook. You put him at the 4 in stretches, and you also allow him to roam where he can be a help defender and help out in those situations. But no indications. There are no indications right now that Jaren Jackson Jr. will be a great rebounder in the NBA from what we've seen through his first 5+ seasons and from what we've seen in the World Cup. So if you go with what we know, um, put in one of those other bigs, Bobby Portis, a little bit better rebounder. Walker Kessler probably. I mean, he's skilled. He's very skilled. I think you could trust him to get on the glass a little bit. But these undersized lineups, if you're going to play them, that's what Steve Kerr is doing. He's playing some smaller lineups where you got Josh Hart playing the 4, you got Paolo Banchero playing the 5 in stretches like that, and Bobby Portis playing the 5, which is understandable because he does it in the NBA. But that's kind of what you're throwing out there right now. And I think to maximize what Jaren is right now, you want to put him out there at the 4 in certain lineups. As a 5, it's going to be tough sledding against certain teams. And this was one of those teams. And this next matchup will be a really big test because he's going to go against Jonas Valanciunas. Grizzlies fans, I don't have to tell you much about the big bruiser. He's going to bang. And he's going to throw that pump fake in Jaren's face, and Jaren's going to have to stay sound and not jump for it. And he can rebound. He can rebound really well. I'm going to have a bold prediction. My bold prediction is Jaren won't have 0 rebounds in the next game. How many will he have? That's to be decided. I was kind of actually encouraged by the way, not that he's been rebounding, but the way he's been attacking the offensive boards. He had a couple games of multiple offensive rebounds in the World Cup leading up to this game against Montenegro. But again, that was against lesser competition. Personally, I'm throwing those games out the window. I want to see what you're going to do against Montenegro, next game against Lithuania. And then after that, potentially, I want to see what you're going to do when you got to play those big bad boys, when you're stepping in front of Canada, when potentially Spain comes knocking again, those type matchups. But speaking of Spain, we got to talk about Santi Aldama because Jaren probably didn't have a good game, but Santi's game wasn't even as good as Jaren's, and it's not because of his performance on the floor that much. We'll talk about that next, coming up on Locked On Grizzlies. Welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies, everyone. I am Damichael Cole, beat writer of the Commercial Appeal right here in Memphis, Tennessee. We're talking all things Grizzlies in this episode, and if you're just tuning in or if you've been waiting on this segment, what we talked about so far is the Grizzlies signing Shaq Harrison. There's some direct Ja Morant correlation there. Talked about it and the potential impact of that signing, or the potential of that signing just being a training camp body. It could go either way. But we also talked about Jaren Jackson Jr. and Team USA, and now we got to talk about Santi Aldama. Santi has been one of the better players for Spain in the World Cup. I've talked really good about him. I've wrote really good things about him at the Commercial Appeal. Averaged 11 points per game leading up until this most recent game against Latvia. And basically, if you were watching the Team USA game, because Santi's game started about an hour later. So if you were watching Team USA play, by the time you finished watching that game, Santi had already played his full entirety of his minutes. Santi finished that game with 7 minutes against Latvia, and Spain lost. Spain lost a close one, built a double-digit lead. Latvia chased them down. No Kristaps Porzingis. Davis Bertans was real good, but Latvia chased them down. Won that game 74-69 against Spain. Spain is defending World Cup champion, and Spain is also ranked the number 1 in the FIBA World Cup rankings. So, Spain knocked off, and some Grizzlies fans, if you were tuned in, this was started a little bit later, but still early, too early for the early crowd. Think about 4:45 start time, but local. But with all that being said, I couldn't help but wonder. I mean, how did Santi ended up riding the pine down the stretch for Spain? Didn't see him in the third quarter. Didn't see him in the fourth quarter. How did we get there? Well, if you look at his numbers from this game, Santi had 2 points, only took 1 shot, missed his only shot, made both of his free throws to secure his 2 points, but he had 2 turnovers in 7 minutes. Was that the cause? Not really sure, but I'll say this. I've seen Usman Garuba in the NBA. I've seen Usman Garuba play with Spain. Seen Usman Garuba miss a point blank layup down the stretch for Spain that Santi Aldama probably would have made. Usman Garuba was a first round pick as well, and so was Santi Aldama. For my money, Santi Aldama is a better player than him right now. Yes, Garuba is probably your more physically gifted guy right now. In terms of 6'8", more chiseled frame. He's more physically gifted, but from the standpoint of size. But Santi's a better shooter, better offensive player. Maybe Spain was thinking in terms of defense. I know some people have said things like, oh, yeah, Spain was relying on their veterans down the stretch, and that's why I'm pointing out Garuba, because I understand playing Victor Claver. I understand playing Rudy Fernandez, Sergio Llull. All those guys are Spain legends, and they're really good. They could play in the NBA. Every one of those guys I just said could play in the NBA if they wanted to come over here, but they like playing in the Euro League. They get good bread over there. Rudy Fernandez is, I mean, he's one of those ones over there. So with all that being said, Garuba is the one guy I'm going to point out because he plays in the front court and he got the minutes over Santi Aldama. 2 points for Santi, and Santi and Spain have a big game coming up as well against none other than Canada. So if you're following me, Jaren isn't the only one that's going to be playing against a former Grizzlies teammate. Santi Aldama is going to be matched up against Dylan Brooks as well as he plays for Team Canada over there. And Canada has been really good, arguably as good or even better than Team USA up to this point in the tournament. But with all that being said, here's my point. Santi Aldama against Spain. I mean, Santi Aldama for Spain has been one of their best players leading up into this game. All of a sudden, he's on the bench. You got the Hernan Gomez brothers. Again, more experienced players for Spain. So you got the Hernan Gomez brothers, Sergio Llull, Rudy Fernandez. I mentioned all these guys, Victor Claver. I completely understand. But Garuba, 21 years of age, got minutes over Santi. That's the one that I think that you can debate. We'll see what Santi's role is going forward. I'm expecting him to get back in the rotation because, quite frankly, when Spain's offense went quiet down the stretch, Santi is a guy who you probably could have gotten the ball in. He's shown a fadeaway, and he's knocked down 3-point shots. And he probably could have been an impact player down the stretch. But tell you what, those games Sunday are going to be really fun. You're going to have Dylan Brooks in Canada going against Spain and Santi Aldama, Leonis and Lithuania. That's going to be a sneaky one. USA better look out. Lithuania is a good team. They also got my guy Donatas Monteilnis over there, former Houston Rocket. They got some talent over there. Team USA better be on its heels because both of those games are going to be really good games on Sunday. Joe Mullinax will be here with you on Monday to recap all of that action as well. But thank you guys for tuning in to Locked On Grizzlies today. Make sure you continue to stay tuned in to Locked On Grizzlies. As I stated a little bit earlier, make sure you tuned in for Monday's episode because Joe's going to recap it. And I can't wait to see what Joe has to say about, Jaren, about Santi. And he get to talk some Dylan Brooks. Grizzlies fans, if you haven't seen Dylan Brooks up close, you get to see him as he takes on Santi Aldama in that game. I think that game is going to be on ESPN+. The Team USA game will be on ESPN2 against Lithuania. So Jaren against Santi, they used to play beside each other. Now they're going to play against each other. I'm looking forward for that matchup. Really want to see how Jaren will respond from a forceful standpoint. He has all the physical attributes to be a good rebounder in the NBA. We haven't seen it yet. So I'm looking forward to seeing that as much as anything. But thank you guys for tuning in to Locked On Grizzlies today. Remember, Locked On Grizzlies is free and available wherever you get your podcast. I'm Damichael Cole. See you next time on Locked On Grizzlies.